Hi there. Good morning. Happy Sunday, everyone. If you can let me know. Oh, good. Okay. You can see me apparently and hear me. Hi, Morgan and Rain and Jen and Jill and Catherine and everyone. So, yes, please do say hi in the chat. I can't read it all, but at least lets you kind of be connected to each other and presence yourself here. Hi, Renee, Chastity, Roxana, Lauren. Hi, Sarah from Portland, Oregon, Natasha, Sandra. So welcome, everyone. I'm really grateful to be with you and gathering to drink from a deeper well together this morning. Sarai and Devon. So today is the fourth of four. I'm not sure where this is headed from here, but I've really loved having time in this way with you. It's going to be a little different today than it has been the other three because it's Easter Sunday, and there are a couple things that I want to bring in to honor that and link that up and understand it from a deep feminine perspective. Hi, Era and Laurie, Juliet. So let's just take our first few moments to arrive together, and as we're all gathering, I'll give a few minutes before I actually begin, just noticing and allowing for your being to become a little more receptive, right? We're not pushing, we're not trying to blast open or even to feel okay if that's not how you feel right now, but just see if you can meet what is here inside of you, just whatever it is. Softening, sinking back and down and in, coming home here to yourself. And just meeting with what you are without any need to change it. Just meeting, allowing. Right. Hi, Shell J from Brooklyn, Amy from Seattle. Hi, Mercedes from Baja. So in whatever way that makes sense to you, if it means just getting a little more comfortable, if it means just, breathing a little more deeply into your body. As we come to service, we come to be nourished. So no part of us, no part of this way of coming together has to do with changing what you are to become something different. We'll meet what you are. This time we'll meet what you are, whatever that is, but it won't leave you there, right? That's the way that we actually support the evolution and the unfolding of truth, our own personal truths, what's real, what's authentic. The only thing we really have to offer to life and to the moment, right, is by knowing that we can meet what is. That doesn't mean we're going to leave it where it is, right? If we meet what is and it's joy, then we're going to celebrate it. We're going to take it further, open more space for it. If we meet what is and it's disorientation, then we're going to bring that into a deeper orientation, right? We're going to meet that need for security in place. If we meet what is and it's grief, we're going to allow it and see where it leads, right? So wherever you are, know that the intention behind our coming together is to meet where you are, but not to leave you there, right? To take it further. Hi, Karen and Mara in Boulder, Colorado. So, let's see. We've gone a few places in our Sunday services. We're really working with specifically different sensibilities, practices that the deep feminine tradition has to offer to this time that we all find ourselves inside of. It's a time of extremely potent opportunity and extremely rapid change and a stripping away, right? So we've spent time with, one of the services focused around who do you serve? What will you become? that being the orientation you always have, no matter what changes. Another of our services worked with last week, the life, death, life cycle, rejoining that cycle, letting go of the illusion of this life to death and to chaos forevermore, and very consciously rejoining and aligning with the life, death, life cycle that is so much more true, right? And today, inspired by and aligned with the fact that it's Easter Sunday, what we're going to be spending time with is resurrection in the deep feminine tradition, right? What does that mean? Where is our agency inside of that? What are we actually being asked to move toward right now? Because, you know, in such a time where so much is falling away, and there is such a stripping away, there is always inside of that a resurrection. So in my tradition, we honor the fullness of all things. We honor that we will be every place on the circle, but that in truth, the circle is whole. So we know that wherever we are in the descent journey, wherever we are in the stripping away, on a global level, on a personal level, somewhere we are connected to the resurrection. Sometimes it's just a glimmer of a maybe that we could possibly believe in, maybe on the horizon. Sometimes it's a burning fire inside, right? So what we are coming close to today is resurrection. And I want to, before we go more deeply into service, I just want to locate us in relationship to two things: the deep feminine tradition and Jesus. Right? Hi, Holly from Arizona. Hi, Yuvia. And Idri in Bedford, Virginia. So first I want to just, in this time with me, and what I'm speaking from in these services as a priestess is from the deep feminine tradition. And specifically for me, that means a deep feminine tradition. It honors the female body. It honors embodiment, period. My own world and the way that I've brought this lineage through has been informed by deep Tantra and Taoism, Sufism. And one of the I think most important aspects of the tradition that we're speaking from today is that it's a non-oppositional tradition. In deep feminine, we're looking for the truth and the presence of she, the presence of love, of spirit behind all things, right? So, for instance, when approaching Christianity, where there has been a general sense of split between goddess and the Christian religion, right, or the patriarchal religions, right? From my tradition and from my way and where I speak from is that she never went anywhere. And that if you turn toward anything, including the patriarchy, including Christianity, including Islam, all of which I've done, if you turn towards that with purity in your heart, seeking her, seeking your truth without abdicating yourself in the face of it, you can find what's real via discernment rather than opposition. You don't need to oppose and spend a bunch of energy fighting things in order to find your truth. So that's where we are. In her mystery school, we actually have an entire teaching around the patriarchy and how she has lived inside of it. But when I'm bringing Jesus forward here, and when we are having a moment to honor him, we do so as a living truth, right? And in deep feminine tradition, we understand that Jesus was beloved of the goddess. And then what is often born from the prophets, is born from the troubled nature of humanity as well as its beauty. So we know that in the face of everything always, we don't abdicate discernment. This is no different. So as we're working with resurrection today and in different ways, as we're touching into Jesus, I want to invite you to recognize that there's a living presence there. And you know it when you touch it. because it feels like love. It feels like truth. And it goes through your entire being. It's not a concept, it's not a dogma. It's a living relationship between you and a savior presence and a deeply holy incarnation of love, right? So the way that service is going to go today is we're actually going to be working mostly in the deep feminine tradition and with resurrection. I'm adding at the end a half an hour of this is my favorite book of all time. It's called, well, not of Jesus of all time. This is called The Son of Man. It's by Khalil Gibran. And it's some of the most profound and beautiful invocation of the actual essence of Jesus, of Yeshua, of the Christ that I've ever encountered. So we're going to have service till about noon, and then I'm going to stay on for maybe 20 minutes, and we'll just have some readings from that to connect in with Jesus, the living presence. Part of what I want to bring us to in this service is something that I think we all need, which is a sense of integration and being intact, right? So the way that we approach a being like Jesus from a deep feminine tradition, intact and whole, is to understand a couple of things. And this applies to resurrection very much so. One thing to know and understand is that Jesus was beloved of the goddess. He was born of Mary, a virgin priestess. He was anointed by the Magdalene. She was a treasured disciple of his, right? There is no, the way things have evolved in some ways, in their distortions, doesn't change the truth. And when you look to the real stories of Jesus, when you go past even the Bible and into deeper, less translated writings, stories of him, what you find is a deep reverence for womankind. That was itself revolutionary. I want to bring that in because I know most of you are women. And as you're moving towards resurrection, I want you to know that this is for you to claim. Resurrection, although there is a very long line, much before Jesus, of dying and resurrecting gods, consorts, kings, goddesses, priestesses, right? Resurrection has been with us for thousands of years. It's yours. And when we turn towards the mystery of resurrection, we are turning toward the mystery of that is inside of ourselves. And I think it's important to reconcile that with the deep feminine because it is also ours. It belongs to women as well. And there is deep precedent. There is ancient lineage here of priestesshood, of womankind, of humankind. Resurrection is a human experience that sources in natural law and has for as long as we've been around, as far as I can tell. So as you come to resurrection, especially now, especially in these times when the dying is happening and the resurrection is here and coming, and we want to align with that, it's important that you claim it, that you claim that resurrection is yours, and that there are many ancestors and ancestresses who've walked it in millions of ways, right? We've walked it in our own lives. We've walked it in the face of death, right? So let's start with a prayer. Then we're going to go into teaching, to a practice from there, and then we'll go into some readings. So closing your eyes, coming into your heart, being willing to open to this time together with a volition towards nourishment and what's true for you. Just opening your heart, opening the gentle petals of your being towards the sun, towards the warmth that's gathered here, even just by our togetherness. You choose. This is yours to do, to choose to open towards what is right, towards the true sun. So even beginning here to just gently pedal open towards the warmth of our togetherness, toward the shared strength and fortitude that's here. And we pray, beloved shepherdess, beloved shepherd, you who guides, you who seeks us out and finds us in whatever darkness we may fall into, you who meets us, and you who will guide us forward into all the truth of what we always wanted anyway. We gather together under your protection. We gather together in your name, which is love. In your presence, which is love. In your being that we know without being told that we know. Help us remember. Help us to feel you, to see you made true, made plain in the people around us, in the simple beauties of life. Clear our eyes, clear our minds, clear our hearing, so that we can hear you, so that we can see you, so that we can know you in whatever way you will make yourself known to us, in whatever way we can understand you. Please be with us as we join together and sit at the feet of the mystery of the resurrection. The holy mystery of humankind, of the soul, of the heart, and of our world. This holy mystery that our entire world is sharing in, is walking together. We thank you for all your ways that we see and that we don't see. Thank you for bringing us together. Blessed be, blessed be. So I'm going to quickly close the window so that I don't know if you can hear it, but there's a little extra noise out there. I'll be right back. Okay, so as I've mentioned before, these aren't so much discussion focused as just an offering, but you are very welcome to, as you are, connect with each other in the chat, also share anything that's arising for you, or just ignore the chat completely if it keeps you from being present. Whatever you want to do. All right, so resurrection in the deep feminine way. So here's what I want to focus on about resurrection is that it requires complete death. It requires surrender. You don't get to go through the journey of death and resurrection with some idea of what you're going to be on the other side. Death and resurrection in deep feminine way is soul making. It shapes you and it forges you. And it forges you beyond your own will. Right? So what we're going through as a world, and many of us individually, is this level of resurrection. The goal, even the possibility, is not that We're just going to go through this experience, through this descent, and kind of be a better version of ourselves on the other side, or just a little more anything, right? A little more according to our own wishes of what we wanted. Soul forging, a descent journey with its soul forging capacity, basically will shape you if you allow it. And the resurrection comes from that shaping. You have to let go completely. You have to give way to the descent. And often, that's not even an option in a real descent journey. When life is really stripping you bare, when things are really being taken away, and you're being forced to go through an initiation you didn't want and didn't choose, often it's not up to you anyway. That's part of the mechanism. That's part of the natural law of it, right? When you plant a seed in the ground, you're yielding it up to natural law, right? You're yielding it up to forces beyond yourself. You're not the one that's going to grow that. You can witness it. You can nurture, you can celebrate, you can steward whatever it is that's going to grow up from that. But it's not up to you. You can choose what seeds you plant, but how they're going to grow, how they're going to shape and come into their fullness comes through a surrender equal to the surrender that the descent itself has made. So in other words, take what's happening on the planet right now. All these things are happening that nobody wanted for the most part, right? And there's a surrender being forced. You can fight it or you can surrender. And if you surrender, then you're moving in alignment with what is, right? And there's much less angst. So the surrender, the descent experience itself, the hardship, the stripping away, that requires surrender. It forces surrender. After a true descent, if you've been annihilated enough, which is the idea, which is the point of a descent journey, is that it annihilates what's false in you. It brings you to the eternal. It brings you to your true nature. Because when you touch your true nature, you can't ever be annihilated again, right? Because that is the eternal. That is where resurrection comes from. So when we're in a descent journey and we're being annihilated in all the different ways that happens in our personal lives, what we can then understand, the possibility that's open to us, the opportunity is to resurrect in the same way, with that same kind of surrender. If you're annihilated enough, even your resurrection, even your coming back to life, even your moving back into, rebuilding your world happens through grace, and you'll know it. You'll be so much more aware that you are being lived. You are not here just doing your thing. It's not that empty. You're being lived by something much bigger than you, by natural laws, by divine laws, by your soul, right? By the deeper heart inside of you. So this movement towards resurrection is one that it's soul making. It has the necessary movement into it is a full death. So one of the things I want to bring forward for you is the understanding that there is sacred context around the full death that needs to happen in order for there to be a resurrection. It's okay to let go of it all completely, especially if you have to. What that allows for is resurrection, is that force, that emptiness, the letting go is what allows something more than you, something more than you could have imagined, something from grace to come through and to guide you forward and make your life more real, more true on the other side of your descent, rather than diminished on the other side of a descent. Obviously, we look at the story of Yeshua. He died, and for 3 days he was dead before he rose again. There wasn't this kind of, I think I'm going to die most of the way, but I want to keep a few things and I don't want to go all the way. The complete death, a complete death, all of it. Inanna, a much older myth, the story of the goddess Inanna. She descends to the underworld through seven gates. She gets to the underworld. She dies completely, hangs on a hook again, actually, for 3 days as a corpse until the water of life and the bread of life is brought to her and she's resurrected. It's really important for all of us that we recognize, that we give sacred context to the fullness of the annihilation, that we give it at least a moment, at least a breath, right? That we let it be, that we align with it rather than fighting it, because it brings life. Especially when we're at a time as a humanity and as individual human beings where we must create new life, right? There is a huge opportunity opening for us to be part of actually resurrecting our world out of the death cycle it was already in and was just asleep to, right? There is enormous opportunity here. And the resurrection potential of this is where we find that the truth, the inspiration, the actual fire to move into a new life, right? So resurrection requires complete death. And what that means for all of us is that going through this experience where things are falling away and it's scary and it's uncomfortable and all the things that it is that it's up to us to give sacred context to that and to turn toward the resurrection when it comes. And to offer up the little deaths, the big and little deaths of our lives, especially during this time, to offer them up and to understand them as doorways to the resurrection. There are three aspects of resurrection as it's taught in her mystery school. There's rebirth, transformation, and transfiguration. And I think it's helpful to consider all three in this time. So rebirth. Rebirth is very much what nature is exemplifying right now. The canals in Venice are blue and the fish have returned. The dolphins are back to the coasts of Sardinia. The smog is gone over LA. You can see the Himalayas for the first time, right? The generosity, the potency of rebirth, when simply given space to happen, is right there, right? So part of what's moving through this resurrection process that we're in is an alignment with rebirth, right? An alignment with what is it in creation that when you turn towards it, turn towards her, she turned towards you 1,000-fold, right? That's the way that nature in her truth moves, right? There are natural laws that meet us with much greater generosity than what we even turn towards them with. If we turn towards them in alignment with the good, with life-giving, life-sustaining, truth-telling, right? So rebirth, that's part of one of the things we can ride through this resurrection time, is to look towards the rebirth in our own lives and all around us. Find it. It's there. It is very present here. And you can sip in through that. You can actually, it's your choice. This is where you have agency inside of all of this. The descent is a surrender. The resurrection is a surrender. Where you have agency is choice is in what you turn toward. Because you're not alone in this. Natural law is moving strongly as it has for thousands of years, resurrecting all of life on an ongoing basis, right? So the rebirth, where is that in your life? What is it in your life that has been starving, that now that you may have to or can turn towards it, will move towards you with greater generosity than you could imagine? What is it? Is it your inner life? Is it your health? Is it your relationships? Is it one of the many dreams, one of the many things you went ahead and let go of and just started grieving that you don't have to grieve anymore because you can turn toward it? And it's still there, it's still living. There is something in your life at least one thing that's in a phase of rebirth right now. And you can find it and turn toward it and nurture it and know that it's natural law that for every little bit you turn toward it, that will be amplified and magnified coming back to you. That's how rebirth works. Transformation. So rebirth, transformation, transfiguration. Transformation, changing form from one thing to another, right? Also happening, right? You're being asked, we're all being asked to release forms, to change our forms, to be courageous enough to become something different, to do it differently, to know ourselves in the root well enough that we can change forms without abandoning or abdicating our essential self. So transformation doesn't mean that you are one thing and you become something completely different. It means that you retain your root. So even as we're moving through this time, part of what resurrection points us toward is what is always true. What have you been all your life? Despite all the many changes you've already gone through, you can come in here now and gather the power that you already have. You've lived through so many transformations already, and some part of you has remained steady, has remained true. That's your root. And when you stay rooted there, you're going to have so much more courage to change the way you need to change, to meet this new world in the way that it needs to be met. Right? You can transform, become a new form without ever losing your essence. You are what you are in your essential self. You can change form. Deep feminine is that. She is the one who is all forms and always one, always herself. Right? So there is something to be drawn on here inside of you, which is your capacity to shapeshift, to move, to change, and yet to still be true. So that's transformation. That's how we stay rooted in the transformation. Transfiguration. Transfiguration is very much what happened in the resurrection of Jesus, right? He died and was transfigured. He became more of what he was, himself, but more. When Magdalene met him in the garden, she recognized him. She saw him. He was who he was. But now he was really what he was, what he had been all along, what everybody had always known and felt in him all along, why they followed him, why they could hear the words that he had to say, right? Why he was a guide, why he was a savior presence, calling them forward to something more true. So transfiguration, he was himself, but more. And in a way, that is the most living, most true thing that's available to us as we move through this descent journey and into the resurrection is transfiguration. Be yourself, but more than what you've ever allowed yourself to actually be, right? When things are stripped away, when you have to put everything that you were in the ground and release it and sit back and trust and surrender to what is actually still alive, what will actually come back up and grow inside of you, then you're working with transfiguration. You are yourself, but more light. You are yourself, more wisdom. You are yourself with more substance, more power, more influence, more soul force. There's a way that it's not necessarily that you change. You accrue more of what you are. You become more translucent, more substantial. That's transfiguration. And that's the resurrection that we're in a very big way. Right? It's to transfigure. And that is the story of Jesus on the cross, moving into his transfiguration. He lived a life that already was speaking to what he really was. He lived a life according to his message. He lived a life according to who he served. He lived a life of courage. He spoke truth. He served. He healed. So when he died, when he went through his death into his resurrection, he was just transfigured. There didn't have to be that much change because he was already what he was. Death just brought more octaves to it. His resurrection just brought more octaves to it. And that is what I would call you to during this time. Heed the call. Follow this impulse, this almost coerced movement into lining up with what you really are, what's eternal in you, what you will serve, and a life that actually sources in that, moment by moment by moment, so that your transfiguration is ongoing, right? And so that what you are already is a vessel for all the more octaves of what you're going to become. What I want us to draw close to together is the courage and the necessary strength of soul that we need to both to endure and to walk the two things that are happening simultaneously right now, which is the descent and the resurrection. Right? Somewhere inside, what that takes, what that asks, is pretty much just a simple, yes, I will choose you. No, I will not fight this. I will choose this. I'm going to choose to align with this. The stripping away, I choose it, I trust it. The resurrection, I choose it, I trust it. You find it inside yourself and inside your life. But to not fight it. This movement, this what's happening here for us as a humanity is an opportunity to actually live, both individually and as a human race. We can slow down, we can let things be put in the ground, and we cannot fight to restore them to what they were because we don't want what they were. We want more. We want something more true. That's the impulse of resurrection. Always cycles of death, rebirth, death, resurrection throughout our entire lives. And unless we can find that deeper place inside that wants it, that's willing to burn, that's willing to put it down, that's willing to change, transform, be reborn, and resurrect, it's hard. It's really hard because it's part of natural law. It's going to keep happening. This is how life renews herself. This is how we become more true on a soul level, on all sorts of levels. So what I invite you to is to, with me, understand the story of Jesus is one of so many that's just trying to remind us that resurrection is what we're made for. And the resurrection is trustworthy. That the dying and the resurrecting cycle has been with us forever. And it's part of nature. It's something that we can anchor in and align with. And it won't make it all perfect, and it won't make it all pretty, and it doesn't all of a sudden mean there's no suffering. It's not a bypass. It's a living truth. It's a soul forging. So you might die, you might not. Some things may die, some things may not. The point is that you are inside of a living mystery, the mystery of the death and resurrection. And if you haven't noticed it already, I encourage you to look back at your life and see it moving through your life in all the ways it already has. This is not your first time around with this mystery. Look inside. You have more wisdom than you probably imagine. You have more presence than you probably imagine. But maybe you haven't harvested it yet. Maybe you haven't claimed fully yet what you have become by already living through death and resurrection so many times. So here it is again, and you have an opportunity to choose it, give it sacred context, and transfigure your life. Bring your soul in your way, according to one that you serve, in the way that you know her or him or the one. Bring it forward. I want you to have a deep sense of belonging, of orientation and security inside of all of this disorienting change, all of these circumstances, and all the things that you cannot control. That's what I want for you, and that's what salvation is. And when you connect with Jesus and you connect in with the Savior, the salvation, it's home, right? It's heaven. It's salvation. It meets you where you are, right? But it doesn't alleviate all suffering. It's salvation inside of the truth of what it is to be a human being, to be a living being that dies, right? So Missy's saying, surrendering to all aspects of the descent, allowing her to transform and transfigure and resurrect her into a greater version of herself. Yeah. So that's what I have for you today, is mostly this deep encouragement and this promise that I'm meeting you in it. I am meeting death with you. I have met it. I will continue to meet it. And I'll meet you there. You're not alone. Sacred context is what we have ourselves and then what we have together, right, as a community. That we hold each other. We know what we're going through. We know what the sacred context of this experience is. And we know how to hold the sacred context around the descent and resurrection journeys of each other. That's where we can actually be a community of spirit, right? Near and far. The last thing I'll say before we go into practice together is that if you follow some of the writings and teachings that source in early pre-Bible accounts of Jesus, and you go towards the language that he actually spoke, the Aramaic, right? There are two things to understand and to remember about Jesus and the deep feminine tradition. Is that he himself spoke on the hills. He spoke by the lakes. He spoke from nature, right? Where he was drawing, wherever else he was drawing the power that came through him, he revered and he spoke inside of the context of nature. His words, his teachings, right? They draw on what is the mother doing? What is happening in the fields? What is happening with the lilies and the stream, the sky, the heavens? That is available to you and me now. That same presence that held and inspired him is here now for us. And if you go and you drink deeply, clearly, simply, just watch nature, watch the wilderness, watch this that we are surrounded by. She will teach you directly. One of the most beautiful teachings that I understand from Jesus, from the Aramaic, it's been one of the most liberating, kind of transformative pieces, is that he didn't talk about good and bad. He didn't talk about right and wrong. The words from the Aramaic that are translated to say good and bad, right and wrong, in a lot of the translations that we see now, what they meant in the original Aramaic was ripe and unripe. When Jesus, the man, the prophet, the Holy One, was speaking to what is going on here, he wasn't delineating people as good and bad, things as good and bad, polarizing all over the place. He was discussing, he was pointing us towards all of us ripening on the tree of life, some of us ripe, some of us unripe. There's incredible mercy in that, right? There's a deep wisdom, Holy Sophia. Of all the things that Jesus was, when you go to his more pure teachings, go closer to the language that he was actually speaking, holy wisdom is present. He is a son of holy wisdom. And to hold this whole thing that's happening as and all the people around us and all of the ways in which we're separating and conflicted, and to just see what happens when you say, all right, what if there is no good and bad? What if there are ripe and unripe souls, ripe and unripe hearts, ripe and unripe people, right? Then what does that make you? It makes you the steward, the gardener, the potential sun that warms, right? And it means that deep inside, there may be, can we possibly trust that there is a higher natural law happening than we can see in all our intelligence and all our super smart essays that we post up around Facebook and all of our scientific knowledge and all of everything? There's something underneath. Can we touch into that? Can we line up with that? Because we then ourselves are ripe in some places and very unripe in others. And if we hold ourselves in that way, there's a gentleness and there's the possibility that we'll actually ripen, we'll actually open, rather than just stay in this desert of polarized good and bad with no sun, no warmth, no water, no purity, right? No welcoming into growth. So ripe and unripe. That is where Jesus was speaking from, in his words, in his language. How does that change your whole experience of him, of Christianity, of the Bible, whatever? To take it all the way down and ask yourself, put yourself to the tip of the sword. Go all the way to the root. Look for the truth, the greatest, deepest truth that you can find. Don't abdicate your discernment when you go towards Jesus and all the ways that he's been held, upheld, and distorted. Just like anything true and beautiful and holy, there's a presence there and it's there for you. And you know it when you touch it. And you know it when what's in front of you is not that. So we can resurrect Jesus in ourselves. We can resurrect we can resurrect him as a holy beloved of creation, right? We do that. It's your turning toward, it's your alignment that matters in a descent and resurrection journey, and when you're facing things that need your discernment, right? Let's have practice for a moment so that we make a little medicine before we go together. So go ahead and close your eyes and settle in, and I just want you to see from our togetherness, from any of the words that have come out of my mouth, anything that's been moving through my being in our field together. Just notice, is there any light? Is there a light? Is there a spark of life? Is there a remembrance? Just begin here with making this time true for you. And let all my words go. And feel the living truth inside of you. This direct revelation, direct communion. Feel your heart, your mind. What has been given from our time together? For a few moments, just turn your attention fully towards that. This is your holy gift. This is your emergence. Make space. Gently breathing. Nurture whatever has been given, whatever has come to life in you. Nurture that with the sun of your awareness, the warmth of your heart, the fertile welcoming of your womb. Become a dwelling place for the truth as it's revealed through you and in you. Trust. Trust this living word in you. And see if from here you can just feel into death and resurrection in your being. You have to dilate, soften around both. They're huge. And just see about in the support of us together. Can you let it be true for you? Can you see on your golden path in your life what is dying? What is rising up? And in order to honor both of those things, who do you need to become? What more of your soul, of your power, of your truth do you need to open into and claim in order to honor both what dies and what is ever born? Just taking a few more breaths here, dropping in even more deeply. What more of you, what octaves of you do you need to claim in order to meet both death and resurrection with honor, in order to surrender and align with this that is much bigger than you are? But this that loves you deeply. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes. Open your eyes. And what I would invite is for you, if you're willing, to just share in the chat. What is it that you found? What is that core place, the transfiguration you're being called into, what you're being called to become, so that you can hold death and resurrection as both parts of you, as both truths of life? Devin says divine balance. Taylor says I am love itself. Juliet, contentment. Reverence for the natural cycles. Midge is saying clarity. Catherine's saying trust and reverence. Mara is saying endless beginner's mind. Renee said a bold, pulsing emanation of love, so the very embodied sense. Era saying trusting her feminine power. Rebecca, authenticity, creation of beauty. Margarita, trust in the unknown. Anita, it's not all about her. She needs to hold herself with love. And Elena, deeper wisdom. Beautiful. So this, the death and resurrection will have their way, right? This whole process that the world is in will have its way. Again, what you coming again and again to the living reality of you as a transfigured human being. And this doesn't have to be exalted. You don't have to be Jesus walking in the garden, right? Transfiguration is simply that you are yourself. You honor what you are. I'm Jemana. I have this body. I look this way. I live here. I kind of like these things. This is my favorite color. Like, whatever. I'm in love with Paul. All the things that are me. I have a son, Isaiah, all these things. But that transfigured just has more octaves to it. It has a deeper resonance and a deeper alignment, right? So you in your world, what it's calling you to is not to just, destroy or disregard everything that you are, everything that you've been up until this point. But what you will be forced to do in a way, especially if you accept this call to transfiguration, is to reckon with what was always empty all along, right? What is so obviously empty? You don't want it again. It is dead. Don't try to resurrect it. Let it be. Let it be, right? The opportunity here from the pause, the chaos, this amazing thing that has been happening all of a sudden on the planet. The opportunity here is to let what's empty and dead actually be as empty and dead as it always was. All those things that you've been sustaining at the cost of yourself, at the cost of your well-being, at the cost of your presence, right? Let them go. You might as well, because this is just the beginning. Life needs to reset itself. Life wants to thrive, right? And the death resurrection cycle is how she's going to do it, because it's how she's always done it. Just look around, look at nature. She's fine with it. She's really good at it, right? But what's going to happen is these two things: what's empty, and then what right now, with everything simplified and compressed and things are falling away, and security, external security and external freedoms, like all these things are being stripped away. This is not an unusual thing for a spiritual awakening process, right? Two things: what's empty, let it be obviously empty. Please don't try to prop it up. I know it's sad to let familiar things go, but if it's empty, let it be empty. It wants to go in the ground. Give it away. And then on the other hand are going to be all these things that are revealed for what grace, what mercies, what blessings they always were. You'll feel the richness, right? Like, what's it going to be like when you can have time close to your friends again, or whatever that is? It's like, let it be. If you can find that thing inside, that deeper place inside of yourself, that is you, that's your anchor point in the face of what is dying, what's being reborn. Then you will have the tolerance, you'll have the strength to really see and move toward what is actually alive, and to really empty out and put down all the things that are no longer living for you. I'm actually really excited for you. And that doesn't mean that I think it's going to be easy. I know this journey actually really well. And it can be really, really hard, and we need each other. But I do know that what gets us through these things is this, right? This deeper alignment to things that are eternal but not transcendent. We're not aligning to some eternal concept. We're not aligning to some non-dual reality that we're really trying to hold. We're not aligning to anything other. Anything that can't be felt, anything that doesn't feel true is empty. Doesn't matter how awesome it looks, right? Doesn't matter how spiritually wise it seems to present. If it's an agenda, or if you're pushing to get to it, or if you're trying to convince yourself that it's true, it's empty. We're in like raw life right now. Death, resurrection. Stay with what feels true, what you can feel. Be willing to follow that. Don't let any concepts fill your world with the empty promises that they have. Everything that you need, if you turn toward it, is inside of you. Direct revelation, which is also what Jesus was bringing through, is that you and your Creator are together. You are one. It is the friend, the beloved, right? It's inside of you. You are that. You can trust yourself in service to that. Okay, let's close with prayer. We're at the end of service time. And then whoever, we'll see if anybody wants to stay, and I will read to you. We can have some time reading from the Son of Man. Right? Okay, so go ahead and close your eyes and please come to prayer with me. Holy Mother Goddess, Sacred Father God, Son of Truth, Savior and Shepherd, Shepherdess and Torchbearer at the crossroads, be with us as we make ourselves evermore a dwelling place for you. This is what we choose. We want to be a dwelling place for you. In our fear, in our grief, when we're annihilated on the floor in this death cycle, be with us, please. Just let us not be alone when we have to face what dies. And when it's time to resurrect, let us do so through your grace. Let it be real. Let it be living. That because we've had the courage to die, because we've had the courage to be annihilated and be made, be forged, that we can then enjoy, luxuriate, follow the grace of true life. Being resurrected into a life that we love, a life that serves, a life that brings us peace. A life anchored in something more true than we've ever known, that we can feel. Thank you for meeting us in all the ways, all the forms, and all the words that you do. Because we are what we are. We can only understand and see what we can understand and see, and it's your mercy. It's your deep love for us that brings you to us in ways, all the many ways that we can receive you. Thank you for our time together over these past 4 weeks. May it be so that all of us continue to shelter under your protection, continue to find refuge in you and your community of the spirit, of the heart, of the body. And that from this time together, there are doves of grace, countless doves of grace, that fly forth and meet each one of us on our paths when we most need them. Blessed be, blessed be. So thank you all so much for being with me in Sunday services. I've really loved them. And I'm not sure where they're going from here. I'm going to take a little bit of a break and see. I love them. I did not add you to my newsletter list because that was the promise. This was meant to be a free offering, not an email capture, not anything. So if you want to stay connected, you need to hop on my newsletter list. And then that's where I'll be letting you know about other things like this. Yeah, so you can just go to my website, go to hermysteryschool.com and opt in for the newsletter if you want to make sure that you're connected. When I do more Sunday services, I do have you all on your own separate list, and I'll let you know. Yeah, and if you want to, if any of you are, do any of you want to stay and hear some readings about Jesus that are extremely beautiful? Okay. These are like so Khalil Gibran, maybe some of you know him already because he wrote The Prophet and why? He's written a few, like, he's just an incredibly soulful being. And I found this is the Son of Man, which was I had never heard of before. I found it. And what the Son of Man is, so let me just complete that thought. Yeah, stay in touch. I would love to stay in touch with you. Get on the newsletter. Otherwise, I'll let you know about Sunday services. And basically, just so you know, all of this is her mystery school. If you're wondering where it all comes from, where the tradition is, what the body of work is, and we open again in September. You are welcome to come. We do this kind of a thing every Thursday, more discussion based, but all right. So, okay, so just changing. Let me just shift gears here. The Son of Man, just for some context. So when like the way that Khalil wrote this book is basically, I don't know, 30, 60, I don't know how many, a bunch of chapters, super small chapters. And each one of them is written from the perspective of someone who was living at the time that Jesus was present. So there's the Magdalene, there's Joseph of Arimathea, there's also an astrologer, the shoe shiner. It's like he wrote it from Salome, right? From the Pharisees, um, even from people who didn't believe in Jesus at the time or who wanted to see him crucified, right? So it's an amazing book. And of course, it's just partly because it's him. But I picked a couple to read. And, you can just kind of sit back and enjoy. I'll do this for about maybe 20 minutes or so. And I actually, can I say the page numbers, please? I will. Actually, and in her mystery school, there's we have a whole week, we have a whole teaching about Jesus and the Son of God. And in that, basically, I have a recording of some of these being read, and I'm going to send it to you guys when I send out the replay of this. Okay. So I think we'll do 3 different readings. We'll do Matthew with the Sermon on the Mount and another one, and then we'll end with Magdalene. Kelly. Hi, Kelly. I love you too. You have a Paul with you. I have a Paul with me. Not right now in my house, but that's who I'm loving right now. Okay. All right, so Pauls. Oh, yay. That's awesome. That's awesome. Okay. All right, so let's start with Matthew, the Sermon on the Mount. So here we go. One harvest day, Jesus called us and his other friends to the hills. The earth was fragrant, and like the daughter of a king at her wedding feast, she wore all her jewels, and the sky was her bridegroom. When we reached the heights, Jesus stood still in the grove of laurels, and he said, "Rest here, quiet your mind, and tune your heart, for I have much to tell you." Then we reclined on the grass, and the summer flowers were all about us, and Jesus sat in our midst. And Jesus said, "Blessed are the serene in spirit. Blessed are they who are not held by possessions, for they shall be free. Blessed are they who remember their pain, and in their pain await their joy. Blessed are they who hunger after truth and beauty, for their hunger shall bring bread, and their thirst cool water. Blessed are the kindly, for they shall be consoled by their own kindliness. And blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall be one with God. Blessed are the merciful, for mercy shall be their portion. And blessed are the peacemakers, for their spirits shall dwell above the battle, and they shall turn the potter's field into a garden. Blessed are they who are hunted, for they shall be swift of foot, and they shall be winged. Rejoice and be joyful, for you have found the kingdom of heaven within you. The singers of old were persecuted when they sang of that kingdom. You too shall be persecuted, and therein lies your honor, and therein your reward. You are the salt of the earth. Should the salt lose should the salt lose its savor, wherewith shall the food of man's heart be salted? You are the light of the world. Put not that light under a bushel. Let it shine rather from the summit to those who seek the city of God. Think not I came to destroy the laws of the scribes and the Pharisees. For my days among you are numbered, and my words are counted, and I have but hours in which to fulfill another law and reveal a new covenant. You have been told that you shall not kill, but I say unto you, you shall not be angry without a cause. You have been charged by the ancients to bring your calf and your lamb and your dove to the temple, and to slay them upon the altar, that the nostrils of God may feed upon the odor of their fat, and that you may be forgiven your failings. But I say unto you, would you give God that which was his own from the beginning? And would you appease him, whose throne is above the silent deep, and whose arms encircle space? Rather, seek out your brother and be reconciled unto him, ere you seek the temple. And be a loving giver unto your neighbor. For in the soul of these God has builded a temple that shall not be destroyed, and in their heart he has raised an altar that shall never perish. You have been told, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. But I say unto you, resist not evil, for resistance is food unto evil and makes it strong. And only the weak would revenge themselves. The strong of soul forgive, and it is honor in the injured to forgive. Only the fruitful tree is shaken or stoned for food. Be not heedful of the morrow, but rather gaze upon today, for sufficient for today is the miracle thereof. Be not over mindful of yourself when you give, but be mindful of the necessity. For every giver himself receives from the Father, and that much more abundantly. And give to each according to his need, for the Father gives not salt to the thirsty, nor a stone to the hungry, nor milk to the weaned. And give not that which is holy to dogs, nor cast your pearls before swine. For with such gifts you mock them, and they also shall mock your gift, and in their hate would fain destroy you. Lay not up for yourselves treasures that corrupt, or that thieves may steal away. Lay up rather treasure which shall not corrupt nor be stolen, and whose loveliness increases when many eyes behold it. For where your treasure is, your heart is also. You have been told that the murderer shall be put to the sword, that the thief shall be crucified, and the harlot stoned. But I say unto you that you are not free from the wrongdoing of the murderer and the thief and the harlot, and when they are punished in the body, your own spirit is darkened. Verily, no crime is committed by one man or one woman. All crimes are committed by all. And he who pays the penalty may be breaking a link in the chain that hangs upon your own ankles. Perhaps he is paying with his sorrow the price of your passing joy. Thus spoke Jesus, and it was in my desire to kneel down and worship him. Yet in my shyness, I could not move or speak a word. But at last I spoke, and I said, I would pray this moment, yet my tongue is heavy. Teach me to pray. And Jesus said, when you would pray, let your longing pronounce the words. It is in my longing now to pray thus. Our Father in earth and heaven, sacred is thy name. Thy will be done with us, even as in space. Give us of thy bread sufficient for the day. In thy compassion forgive us and enlarge us to forgive one another. Guide us towards thee and stretch down thy hand to us in darkness. For thine is the kingdom, and in thee is our power and our fulfillment. And it was now evening, and Jesus walked down from the hills, and all of us followed him. And as I followed, I was repeating his prayer and remembering all that he had said. For I knew that the words had fallen like flakes that day, For I knew that the words that had fallen like flakes that day must set and grow firm like crystals, and that the wings that had fluttered above our heads were to beat the earth like iron hooves. That was Matthew about the Sermon of the Mount. Let's read about Magdalene. So this is written from Mary Magdalene's perspective. Yeah, oh, good. It's beautiful. So you'll get a sense for how he wrote this, which is, each person. I mean, you get these differing, these beautiful prisms of Jesus. Okay, so Mary Magdalene. It was in the month of June when I saw him for the first time. He was walking in the wheat field when I passed by with my handmaidens, and he was alone. The rhythm of his step was different from other men's, and the movement of his body was like naught I had ever seen before. Men do not pace the earth in that manner, and even now I do not know whether he walked fast or slow. My handmaidens pointed their fingers at him and spoke in shy whispers to one another. And I stayed my steps for a moment, and I raised my hand to hail him, but he did not turn his face, and he did not look at me, and I hated him. I was swept back into myself, and I was as cold as if I had been in a snowdrift, and I shivered. That night I beheld him in my dreaming, and they told me afterward that I screamed in my sleep and was restless upon my bed. It was in the month of August that I saw him again through my window. He was sitting in the shadow of the cypress tree across my garden, and he was as still as if he had been carved out of stone, like the statues in Antioch and other cities of the north country. And my slave, the Egyptian, came to me and said, "That man is here again. He is sitting there across your garden." And I gazed at him, and my soul quivered within me, for he was beautiful. His body was single, and each part seemed to love every other part. Then I clothed myself with raiment of Damascus, and I left my house and walked towards him. Was it my aloneness, or was it his fragrance that drew me to him? Was it a hunger in my eyes that desired comeliness, or was it his beauty that sought the light of my eyes? Even now I do not know. I walked to him with my scented garments and my golden sandals, the sandals the Roman captain had given me, even these sandals. And when I reached him, I said, "Good morrow to you." And he said, "Good morrow to you, Miriam." And he looked at me, and his night eyes saw me as no man had seen me. And suddenly I was as if naked, and I was shy. Yet he had only said, "Good morrow to you." And then I said to him, "Will you not come to my house?" And he said, "Am I not already in your house?" I did not know what he meant then, but I know now. And I said, "Will you not have wine and bread with me?" And he said, "Yes, Miriam, but not now." "Not now, not now," he said. And the voice of the sea was in those two words, and the voice of the wind and the trees. And when he said them unto me, life spoke to death. For mind you, my friend, I was dead. I was a woman who had divorced her soul. I was living apart from this self which you now see. I belonged to all men and to none. They called me harlot and a woman possessed of 7 devils. I was cursed and I was envied. But when his dawn eyes looked into my eyes, all the stars of my night faded away, and I became Miriam, only Miriam, a woman lost to the earth she had known, and finding herself in new places. And now again I said to him, "Come into my house and share bread and wine with me." And he said, "Why do you bid me to be your guest?" And I said, "I beg you to come into my house." And it was all that was sod in me, and all that was sky in me, calling unto him. Then he looked at me, and the noontide of his eyes was upon me, and he said, "You have many lovers, and yet I alone love you. Other men love themselves in your nearness. I love you in yourself. Other men see a beauty in you that shall fade away sooner than their own years. But I see in you a beauty that shall not fade away. And in the autumn of your days, that beauty shall not be afraid to gaze at itself in the mirror, and it shall not be offended. I alone love the unseen in you." Then he said in a low voice, "Go away now. If this cypress tree is yours and you would not have me sit in its shadow, I will walk my way." And I cried to him, and I said, "Master, come to my house. I have incense to burn for you, and a silver basin for your feet. You are a stranger, and yet not a stranger. I entreat you, come to my house." Then he stood up and looked at me even as the seasons might look down upon the field, and he smiled. And he said again, "All men love you for themselves. I love you for yourself." And then he walked away. But no other man ever walked the way he walked. Was it a breath born in my garden that moved to the east? Or was it a storm that would shake all things to their foundations? I knew not, but on that day the sunset of his eyes slew the dragon in me, and I became a woman. I became Miriam, Miriam of Migdal. That's a really beautiful one. Let's maybe find one more. Mm. Francesca says this is healing some level of her inner child around story time. I love story time a lot. I'm really loving this too. So let's do here's a short one, and then I'll read a longer one. So this one is from one of the Marys. So, right, Mary the Magdalene, Mary the Mother. One of the Marys. His head was always high, and the flame of God was in his eyes. He was often sad, but his sadness was tenderness shown to those in pain, and comradeship given to the lonely. When he smiled, his smile was as the hunger of those who long after the unknown. It was like the dust of stars falling upon the eyelids of children, and it was like a morsel of bread in the throat. He was sad, Yet it was a sadness that would rise to the lips and become a smile. It was like a golden veil in the forest when autumn is upon the world. And sometimes it seemed like moonlight upon the shores of the lake. He smiled as if his lips would sing at the wedding feast. Yet he was sad with the sadness of the winged who will not soar above his comrade. Okay, so do we have like, I'm just wondering how much more I should read. How are we doing on time, everybody? All right. I might read this one more kind of longish one. Maybe we'll stop there. So this is from Joseph. Okay, let's do this one, Joseph of Arimathea, and then maybe we'll read the one because there's one that he wrote that's priestesses. It's like a group of priestesses. Okay, thank you all. All right, Joseph of Arimathea. You would know the primal aim of Jesus, and I would fain tell you, but none can touch with fingers the life of the blessed vine, nor see the sap that feeds the branches. And though I have eaten of the grapes and have tasted the new vintage at the winepress, I cannot tell you all. I can only relate what I know of him. Our master and our beloved lived but 3 prophets' seasons. They were the spring of his song, the summer of his ecstasy, and the autumn of his passion. And each season was 1,000 years. The spring of his song was spent in Galilee. It was there that he gathered his lovers about him, and it was on the shores of the blue lake that he first spoke of the Father and of our release and our freedom. By the lake of Galilee we lost ourselves to find our way to the Father, and oh, the little, little loss that turned to such gain. It was there the angels sang in our ears and bade us leave the arid land for the garden of heart's desire. He spoke of fields and green pastures, of the slopes of Lebanon where the white lilies are heedless of the caravans passing in the dust of the valley. He spoke of the wild briar that smiles in the sun and yields its incense to the passing breeze. And he would say, the lilies and the briar live but a day, yet that day is eternity spent in freedom. And one evening, as we sat beside the stream, he said, behold the brook and listen to its music. Forever shall it seek the sea, and though it is forever seeking, it sings its mystery from noon to noon. Would that you seek the Father as the brook seeks the sea. Then came the summer of his ecstasy, and the June of his love was upon us. He spoke of naught then but the other man, the neighbor, the road fellow, the stranger, and our childhood's playmates. He spoke of the traveler journeying from the east to Egypt, of the plowman coming home with his oxen at eventide, of the chance guest led by dusk to our door. And he would say, your neighbor is your unknown self made visible. His face shall be reflected in your still waters, and if you gaze therein, you shall behold your own countenance. Should you listen in the night, you shall hear him speak, and his words shall be the throbbing of your own heart. Be unto him that which you would have him be unto you. Be unto her that which you would have her be unto you. This is my law, and I shall say it unto you and unto your children, and they unto their children, until time is spent, and generations are no more. And on another day he said, You shall not be yourself alone. You are in the deeds of other men, and they, though unknowing, are with you all your days. They shall not commit a crime in your hand, not be with their hand. They shall not fall down, but that you shall also fall down, and they shall not rise, but that you shall rise with them. Their road to the sanctuary is your road. And when they seek the wasteland, you too seek with them. You and your neighbor are two seeds sown in the field. Together you grow, and together you shall sway in the wind, and neither of you shall claim the field. For a seed on its way to growth claims not even its own ecstasy. Today I am with you. Tomorrow I go westward. But ere I go, I say unto you that your neighbor is your unknown self made visible. Seek him in love, that you may know yourself, for only in that knowledge shall you become my brothers, my sisters. Then came the autumn of his passion, and he spoke to us of freedom, even as he had spoken Galilee in the spring of his song. But now his words sought our deeper understanding. He spoke of leaves that sing only when blown upon by the wind, and of man as a cup filled by the ministering angel of the day to quench the thirst of another angel. Yet whether that cup is full or empty, it shall stand crystalline upon the board of the Most High. He said, You are the cup, and you are the wine. Drink of yourselves to the dregs, or else remember me, and you shall be quenched. And on our way to the southward, he said, Jerusalem, which stands in pride upon the height, shall descend to the depth of Jehannam, the dark valley, and in the midst of her desolation I shall stand alone. The temple shall fall to dust, and around the portico you shall hear the cry of widows and orphans, and men in their haste to escape shall not know the faces of their brothers, for fear shall be upon them all. But even there, if two of you shall meet and utter my name and look to the west, you shall see me. And these my words shall again visit your ears. And when we reached the hill of Bethany, he said, Let us go to Jerusalem. The city awaits us. I will enter the gate riding upon a colt, and I will speak to the multitude. Many are there who would chain me, and many who would put out my flame. But in my death you shall find life, and you shall be free. They shall seek the breath that hovers betwixt heart and mind, as the swallow hovers between the field and his nest. But my breath has already escaped them, and they shall not overcome me. The walls that my Father has built around me shall not fall down, and the acre he has made holy shall not be profaned. When the dawn shall come, the sun will crown my head, and I shall be with you to face the day. And that day shall be long, and the world shall not see its eventide. The scribes and the Pharisees say the earth is thirsty for my blood. I would quench the thirst of the earth with my blood. But the drops shall rise oak trees and maple, and the east wind shall carry the acorns to other lands. And then he said, Judea would have a king, and she would march against the legions of Rome. I shall not be her king. The diadems of Zion were fashioned for lesser brows, and the ring of Solomon is small for this finger. Behold my hand. See you not that it is overstrong to hold a scepter, and over-sinewed to wield a common sword? Nay, I shall not command Syrian flesh against Roman, but you, with my words, shall wake that city. and my spirit shall speak to her second dawn. My words shall be an invisible army with horses and chariots, and without axe or spear I shall conquer the priests of Jerusalem and the Caesars. I shall not sit upon a throne where slaves have sat and ruled over other slaves, nor will I rebel against the sons of Italy. But I shall be a tempest in their sky and a song in their soul, and I shall be remembered. They shall call me Jesus the Anointed. These things he said outside the walls of Jerusalem before he entered the city, and his words are graven as with chisels. Well, there's a whole book here. And every single one of them is like that. It has this different, beautiful invocation of what I would say is the true Savior, right? Yeah. So that was The Son of Man by Khalil Gibran, and you can find it yourself. It's, for me, it is the closest thing to what I have experienced as the presence and the living word of Jesus in my own personal life. So very sweet having some reading time with you all and just sharing in that. That's one of my this is one of my most favorite special holy books. I don't ever not have it, actually, but I don't share it with that many people. So okay, well, so much love to all of you, and I really, may this have been time that has fortified your spirit and your heart, and that you've actually felt in your body, and that you can, let's ride this together. We're resurrecting. We can ride it. So yeah, beautiful. Yeah, so much love to all of you. And I'll be sending you out the replay, and I'll send you a link to an audio with more of those readings that you can just listen to on your own time. All right. Blessed be.